Thank you for listening to the Sports Mastery Podcast. I appreciate all of your input, all of your feedback, and I love your emails that y'all have been sending to me. If you're listening to the show for the first time, or if you're a repeat listener, I want to say at the outset, I would like to apologize because we had some internet streaming issues which created some double talk at the end of the show. So I had to cut this show short, probably by 15 to 20 minutes. Nevertheless, in this episode, we're discussing sports specialization. This is part 2 to a prior conversation, but more specifically in this episode, we're discussing how to address sports specialization. So again, please accept my apologies. We did have to cut this show short due to some streaming issues. Welcome back to the show, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, heroes and villains. I'm your host, Deshaun Fauntleroy. I know your time is precious, so we're going to get right into today's show. If you were with us last week, you know that we were discussing early sports specialization. Today, we're going to discuss addressing sports specialization. So this is sports specialization part 2. And in this episode, we're going to discuss, to break the cycle of sports specialization, what activities should replace it. We'll get into discussing a comprehensive strength and conditioning program. However, there are some questions that we're going to address. Why should these athletes participate? Well, we have to make considerations when designing a youth strength conditioning program. We're going to address myths of youth resistance training. We're going to discuss general body strength and conditioning. We're going to discuss prehab and rehab, teaching the correct movements that will last a lifetime. And finally, we'll close out with this question. How is the information spread to coaches about its value for sports performance and general health and wellness? What is the approach to foster a good relationship between sports coaches and strength coaches? And importantly, what should a parent coach look for in a strength coach or skills trainer? We'll also provide some recommended resources for youth resistance training and development. So one of the first things that I want to get into today is we wanted to make some clarifications based on some books that we were quoting in regard to specialization and the 10,000 hour rule. Sean, would you care to touch on that?
Sure. Regarding the 10,000 hour rule, which is a concept for success that was created by Anders Ericsson. So he did a study on violinists and determined how many hours they needed to practice in order to become an expert in their field. I think the last session I alluded to talking about Malcolm Gladwell. Well, he popularized it in his book Outliers. So I just wanted to give Anders Ericsson the credit for creating that 10,000 hour rule as well. And also regarding a sports specialization, it's more prevalent in the female athlete, the young female athletes, basically based on their maturation process. We all know that females mature a little earlier than males, and so they're pushed into specialization sports such as gymnastics, diving, skating, ice skating, and that's why you see them performing at younger ages when compared to the males who are a bit older. So their maturation process takes a little bit longer. But sports specialization is pretty much more prevalent with the females, although parents and some coaches encourage parents to specialize in sports with both male and females. But we see it more often with the females.
As I said before, we're going to discuss sports specialization and what activities should replace it. Now, the immediate answer is a comprehensive strength and conditioning program. What does that mean? When I have a new kid come into the facility that I've never seen before, and we're going to discuss strength and conditioning, one of the first things that I like to start with is basically what I would call the bottom or the base of the pyramid. Even if I don't know them, they might be an excellent athlete, but if I know that they've never trained with me or they don't have any prior training experience, for me personally, I'm going to start off with balance and symmetry drills in the form of mobility, in the form of mobility and stability drills. And that might be bilateral and unilateral movements. Then I'm going to go up the ladder to your general strength as far as like pushing, pressing, bending, squatting, and then move on up to power, plyometrics, and then the speed, agility, quickness work. That's just an overview of where I would start at. I know we're going to go deeper, so I want to break the ice and open this up, Sean. What are your thoughts on a comprehensive strength and conditioning program to replace the cycle of sports specialization?
Well, my thoughts are it's a win-win for everyone involved. Um, when I say that, it's a win for the person we're working and we're most concerned, or we should be most concerned about, is the athlete. So it's a win for them. It's a win for their parents. It's a win for coaches. Because if as strength coaches we can prepare an athlete, prepare him mentally and physically through strength training, we're giving the coach a better player. We're giving a coach a player that may become stronger, may become quicker, more agile, and all the other things that come along with the strength conditioning program. Also, as you mentioned earlier, a person who participates in a program like this, the research has shown that injuries are less devastating to the person. So we're giving them a person who may be able to sustain a season without experiencing a severe injury. A parent, some of the kids that I worked with, parents have noticed mentally their kid is different. They're a little bit more confident. They feel better about themselves. So all three win in this case when we implement a comprehensive strength program. Going back to what you said, though, as far as a strength program, what you said was very key in that you have to do an assessment prior to jumping a kid into a program. You have to see how they move, see if there are any limitations, any asymmetries. And so that gives us an idea on how to design a program specifically for that individual and not some cookie cutter program that may just come out of a magazine. So that is very important to do a pre activity assessment on the child or the athlete.
I've had a prior experience where I've had a kid that was a junior in high school coming in the facility. And I've also had like 7th and 8th grade girls that may have been with me for a year, and they've got into doing deadlifts. They've got into doing like, versions of the power clean. And with this particular kid in mind, he just thought that he could come and jump right in with kids that had been in a facility for 2 or 3 years. And I'm like, no, I have to see where you are. I have to see how you can move and manipulate your own body weight before I take responsibility for an injury, or before I would progress him further. So what he did was he called his high school coach and he said, I just wasted an hour of my time doing body weight work. And for me, that's the kid that I don't want in a facility, because you want to just go from A to Z or not do the work to progress. And to this day, I remember meeting this athlete. They all want to go Division I or play college football, but he's sitting at home right now. And had he took the opportunity to explore strength training and slowly progress for 24 months, I would venture to say he would be in a different place right now. But as a receiver and cornerback, he just didn't have the speed or strength to match up to get to that higher level. And I know, Leland, you being a basketball coach and a basketball trainer, you've seen the same thing come into the gym where you might start them with drills that they feel that
as far
are
as
remedial.
as you guys know, you can find out what's going on with an athlete's body just taking them through a few little functional tests. The checking, checking out the lower quarters, shoulder impingement, seeing if they got any problems with just basic functional movement. Once you get past that, I go slow. I don't throw a bunch of weight on my athletes. I just like to see how they perform with a little weight added to the functional movement that we're executing at that particular time. And if we're okay, then we work up slow from that point on. I just find that athletes are, in this world today, everything is I gotta have it now. I gotta have it now. And kids, after their high school seasons are over with, what they're doing is they're running to find the nearest AAU basketball team or 7-on-7 football team. And a lot of those kids, I think I repeated, I'd said this before in an episode before when we were discussing some things. A lot of these kids aren't even ready to participate in a situation like that. Actually, what they should be doing is they should then look at their season and say to themselves, okay, what was it that I felt like I failed at? What was it I felt like I did well at? Was it a skill set situation? Was it a strength situation? Was it a speed situation? And diagnose yourself after that season. After you diagnose what's going begin to fix it. Don't go jump into on an AU basketball team or a 7-on-7 football team. Fix what's going on with you functionally. Fix what's going on with you as far as your strength is concerned. Um, Fix what's going on with you as far as your skill set is concerned. That process, kids don't use it anymore. I was just talking to a dad yesterday about that.
Go ahead, Sean.
Yes, I want to go back to what you were talking about. I don't want to put it all on the kid as far as him thinking program is a waste. Also, I want to include the parents in here because I've had an example where I had a couple of kids who had been with me 6 weeks, and we were doing some plyometrics. Well, this one parent wanted to bring his kid in, who was a star quarterback. I mean, granted, he may be a good athlete, but he wanted his son to jump right in where these kids, I have been working together with them for 6 weeks and building them up to this point. And I straight up told him that I'm not going to put your son with these guys yet. He's got to show me certain steps before he gets here. And the dad was adamant about it. And what I did, I basically told him that's not the way I'll do things, and that if you want someone else to do that, you by all means, you're welcome to go. So I had to forego training with his son because I had to stand by with what I know and not have some parent come and try to influence me based on what they wanted to do. So, the coaches, parents, and the athlete, they're all, they need to be taught what's the correct way and not implement their ideas on what we already know.
Oh, okay. You know what? I really appreciate what you said about the jump training experience, and parents, coaches. If you're listening to this, we will be sharing some resources throughout this. I really appreciate what the one book for all coaches to read. If you're a strength coach, personal trainer, I would definitely recommend The Essentials of Strength and Conditioning. Sean mentioned jump training, and there's a couple guys out there. I know one of the guys' name is Bobby Smith and Adam Feet, or Fight, if I'm saying it right. But I believe their company is called Reach Your Potential Training, and they have a guide, a coach's guide to jump training, where they have a video. It comes in DVD, and also they have a workbook. What I really appreciated about them, in their illustrations, they show them working with middle school and high school athletes, and they show the progressions and regressions, and I really like what they start with, because they go from simple to complex. And it was a piece of material for me that I just added to my repertoire. And more importantly, they use concepts of from A.S. Prilipin in terms of the number of jumps, where they significantly lessen the number of jumps, where their philosophy is, if we do Olympic lifting for explosive training, why don't we keep our plyometrics similar to that, and approaching it in a way where I'm not going to have a ninth grader doing 150 or 100 jumps in a session. So I can appreciate what you said about that, Sean, as far as taking somebody through a 6-week progression and moving them on, and you have somebody that comes right in. I've had that experience before too. And it can be frustrating for the athlete, but for us as professionals, we have to incorporate certain principles to guarantee, the success of the athlete. I can't move you right in because I could be putting you at risk. For instance, if we're doing some basic jump training, our next progression It might be adding a weighted vest. Then I might go to hand weights, and then I might go to adding ankle weights to 24-inch box jumps. But if you come in that day, I'm not going to put all of that on you. I don't care if you're a junior, senior, star quarterback or not. If you haven't progressed with the rest of the group, keep
Deshaun,
their
me and you
check.
discussed yesterday the importance of trainers recognizing what type of talent that you're working with. Well, if you're working with that type of talent that shouts, or whether you working with whispering talent, I would rather work with whispering talent. I would because it seems like you build uh, a better connection with those types of kids. You know, they're open book. They're willing to listen. If you're good at explaining yourself to whatever you're participating in, they love to listen. The other kid, sometimes you spend half your time trying to convince them and kind and coax them and give them a reason why they should do certain things. Um, I think that has a big part. That plays a big part in development also, and parents being real with where their kids are, or um, a coach with being real with where his players are. You know what I'm saying? And starting from there, I think it's not there's no way you can lose. Just like Sean said, it's a win-win situation by approaching it the commonsensical way of strength training, skill set building, team involvement, performance, and then starting that cycle all over again every year.
Yeah, I like what you're saying because ultimately it brings us to the point of the things that we consider as coaches. And parents, if you're listening to this, know that a certain coach is going to take considerations in athletes that come through the building. And some of those considerations are chronological age, their biological age, and their training age. And I know, Sean, this is something that y'all discuss in your groups and through the Strength and Conditioning Association. Would you give us a description of or definition of chronological age, biological age, and training age when we have to make these considerations when people come to our
Okay, well,
building?
the one the probably most obvious example I'll use, and I will go back to the AAU. A lot of AAU coaches, they want that player that's ready right now. That's you can just look at them and tell they're a little bit more mature physically than some other kids, that they can move a little quicker, a little faster, a lot more power. So everyone's going to gravitate toward that kid because he's ready now. That's the kid that's going to dominate now. Okay. And not listening, not observing that there may be a kid who may not be they're the same age, but he may not be um, he was born probably a little later, so he's lacking in maturity. All right, so if you look at them both, one looks more mature, one's not, although they may be the same age. And so with that kid, little do they know that he may have a greater upside than the kid who's already arrived there. So what people do tend to do is look at a kid um, physically and think, okay, he's ready for this. Where that's a chronological age, and they may not be. They may not be ready at this time. But far as dealing with their bodies, they may be lacking because he could be a big 11-year-old or
Coordination.
big 9-year-old. Doesn't mean that his body is caught up to his age, where he actually maybe may be lacking in that area. So someone may think that he's ready just by on the outlook, but he really isn't. He's like you said, Leland. He's not coordinated. He doesn't have a body awareness, and so to jump a kid into a program like this is can be detrimental to him. And one of the things that I want to bring to their attention is the long-term athlete development. And what that does is training based on your age, your development. And so it's in the areas we're looking at, the young kids, I guess you could say from 10 or a little bit younger, where we're just looking at their basic movement skills, seeing how their body moves, see if they can skip, see if they could jump, how they run, can they kick, throw, catch. So we're just looking at just the basic movement skills.
There's different variations of jump ropes that we do, single leg, double it up, and then we, just like the boxers do, double turn, double turn, double turn. Well, you'll find out if you pulled out a jump rope nowadays and you told your young men, ages, I say, ages 9 to 12, you'd be surprised at how many kids can't even jump rope. You'd be really surprised. And I remember when we were kids, Sean. Remember, jump rope was what we call a girls type of activity. If you remember, jump rope, hopscotch, that was a girls' activity. that was our mentality. And if you could jump rope, it was like, man, you would get ridiculed so bad in today's world. You'd be a troubled child. You'd be a beat down child. Back then you just had to muddle through it, figure it out. Some of the qualities I love that we had that is just not there anymore. But those are things that you gotta kind of look at. The situation.
Yeah, I agree because actually, now that I'm involved in this, I'm not surprised. I had a high school player that didn't know how to skip. And, kind of caught me off guard. And this is a guy. He's on. I think he was like varsity basketball player. And excuse me. No, he's a varsity basketball player. We were doing some work, and he could. I was trying to. I say we're going to skip because the thing I think is important is, and you can learn a lot about it, is really when you start to incorporate a dynamic warm up, and you're looking at his movement or her movement. But this kid in particular didn't know how to skip. I had to explain, right, left, skipping. We started as a march and then proceeding to a skip. And I asked him, I said, when you were a kid, you didn't have skip races, which was common in my neighborhood. You would skip, skip just run around the street. So, I took that for granted, and that let me know that I needed to, not assume all the time and just make sure that I don't have that look of shock on my face and just teach what the kid doesn't know.
You know what? I like that, man. And again, parents, if you're listening to this, or if you're a new sports performance coach, you have to keep the principles of training in mind. And I know some of us work with large groups, small groups, and even if you're working one-on-one, you have to keep in mind individualization. You have to be gradual. You have to be progressive. Then at some point, you might overload. And more importantly, you have to have an awareness. And outside of that, you have to have consistency. Now, going back to individualizing, if you're in a group and if we're doing sprinting drills and we're doing some advanced A skips and we know that this individual isn't strong enough or doesn't have the coordination to do that, maybe we should regress back to A marches and then getting back to a general A skip. But I think like what you guys have been saying before, sometimes, us collectively as a community will forget to, individualize. You can't have all kids doing the same thing because one, if they're doing it sloppy, if they're not doing it mechanically right, we're basically wasting time and wasting money. So at a certain point, when we're able to gradually increase the reps, when we're able to progress from maybe, some simple things with the technique bar, maybe now we can add a little weight. And then maybe now with our jumps, we can add some hand weights or some ankle weights. But even as a coach in a 90-minute session, you have to remember that you have to pay attention to be aware of your athletes. Are they starting to talk, or are they talking about something outside of the workout? Because maybe they've checked out, or maybe it's too difficult, or maybe they're getting frustrated. And then we have to regress certain things. But at the end of the day, when you're talking about a comprehensive strength and conditioning program, depending on where the athlete is at, it may be 2 times a week. It may be 3 times a week. Sean, I think that's something that you could touch on depending on, the age range or the training age, or are they in preseason or are they in the off season?
Yeah, those are 2 considerations you want to look at. at off season and in season. With the group that I deal with, a lot of times they're because we're talking about sports specialization, they're involved in a sport year round. So even though it may be the high school's off season, they're in club. So they're playing games while we're training. So I have to be cognizant of that and adjust my training around their games. So I don't want to blow them out of the water a day before their game. So I have to adjust. So that's why it's important for me to get their schedule and always stay and keep in contact and ask them what's going on. What tournaments you have, and and that way I can design a program, because it's not just you just don't just throw it out there. There is a science to it, because I do want to maximize the performance of the athlete. So if he gets with me one day and I just wear him out, he's not going to be any good to his coach or his team if they play a game the following day. So I normally like to go, 2 to 3 times a week, because the rest period is very important. And it just depends on what their game is, on how I'm going to formulate their workout. I mean, there have been times I've gone, I'm headed to training with a certain idea what kind of training program is going to be, and I've had to adjust on the fly soon as I arrive, because the kids say, "Oh, something's changed in our schedule, and this is what we're going to be doing." So I have to adjust it, and that's why I said it's very important for parents to get with someone who's knowledgeable and understands this process. Because if you trust your child to somebody who doesn't understand, they're just going to say, "This is my program. This is how we're going to proceed," and that's not a win for anyone.
A perfect situation to get into would be, at the end of your season, run track. I encourage all my athletes to get on a track team and understand the what I call the first sport, what the first sport is all about. You know what I'm saying? That's the ultimate to me. Track is the ultimate sport, and the attention those athletes give to their bodies it's like no other. Football athletes, basketball athletes can really learn to respect their bodies uh, by approaching it in a commonsensical way. You know, just like Sean, majority of your kids are playing whatever particular sport and they're training with you. It's up to that parent to go, you know what, Junior? Um, let's leave the ball alone right now. Let's take care of your body, because one day you're gonna be old as I am, and you're gonna want to be you're gonna want to be able to function properly. It was. I was just telling the kid yesterday. I think the most difficult time me and Jazz had was his eighth grade year. His eighth grade year going into high school. But after that, he never doubted me after that, because all the kids went and played AAU basketball, and his body, I felt at that time, because he was a little overweight. I said, dude, there's some things that we're gonna have to do that's gonna probably benefit you if you just let them go out and do what they're doing, and we could just work on your body, work on the things that we need to work on to get you better. And it was a rough first 2 months, but after we got into it, he started to understand what we were trying to do. And then uh, the old saying that I give him, I said, we let them go out there and gain all the fame, and then when they come back home, we just gonna take it away from them. And that's exactly what happened. When they came back home, he was probably the only kid his freshman year that was not only a freshman basketball player, but he was actually a freshman hot varsity basketball player that we really needed. That became an important part of our team that year. So that should be the approach. I think the parents, it's up to the parents and that athlete to understand that that time with his strength coach is so vital. It's so vital in his progression. Jazz just put up a a, a feat that he or he a lift that he he cleaned. I think. Well, how much was it, Sean? 473, I think. Huh? Deadlifted 473 pounds. No, not clean, but deadlifted 473, and you know, just a lot of kids, they seen that. And, I left a comment. I go, you guys think this is done overnight. This was started back when he
Yeah,
was in
he
seventh grade.
deadlifted
I was gonna say he cleaned
And
473.
400 some
honestly,
pounds. Woo.
that's true. That's what that has come to. That was what he was doing. Those basic, to work up to that point, he had been doing that since the seventh grade, and he's a point guard. You know what I'm saying? So it's up to that parent, man, and that kid to just kind of pull back. And it's a way you go about it, commonsensical way you do things.
Yeah. Well, I kind of want to. I
True.
don't want parents to think that we're dogpiling on them, because if you're a parent and you don't know, we can't fault them for what they don't know. But at the end of the day, there's no excuse for you not going to seek the information. And a lot of parents are victims of the coaches, smooth talking, slick talking coaches who are giving all this information. And some parents, they just don't know. So for those, we can't really fault them. They just trying to do what's best for their kid. But that's why if a coach tells you something, go find out. Ask the information. I mean, there's more than enough ways to find out if this is the right thing. But I do like what you were saying about the transition to track, and you're
Mm-hmm.
dead
Mm-hmm.
spot on about this, because track has different disciplines that can suit different positions on a football team. I mean, you got your skills players, they can do the sprints, 200s, 400s, and then you have your linemen, they could do the shot put or the discus. So you're spot on as far as that transition, and you giving your body a rest from the everyday banging of football. So that was a great point.
Going back to what you said, parents don't know what they don't know, and then they'll buy into like slick talking coaches, and those are the myths where I don't want them doing any weight training because they're going to get hurt. I don't want them to hurt his back. I don't want them to stunt their growth. They'll get slower. Now, Leland, we know a particular individual that started off school with your son, in high school early on, and I would see his dad all the time at the clinic. And I'm like, man, when are you going to let me work with him? He's a jumper. I think he's a triple jumper and maybe even a long jumper. Well, I mean, the kid ended up growing to like 6'6" or like 6'7" and went down to Texas Tech. And, they thought they had something that could compete, walking in as a freshman. And what happened was he wasn't ready for the demands of being a jumper at the collegiate level. And he ended up hurting his back. They put him on all these different pills, and he ended up leaving the team, coming back, having a surgery. And I see his dad, he's in the clinic now. He's on the clinic side getting rehab for a whole summer. And I'm looking at his dad. I'm like, your son could be over here with us.
That
Yes.
kid is and was and is a phenomenal athlete. Phenomenal, phenomenal athlete. You hear me? Phenomenal athlete. But psychologically, something else. That's altogether different. God, this kid we're talking about is like 6'6". Um, I mean, spring. Okay, nice, hefty build. Uh, I pulled him in the gym one day because we were in the gym lifting. And I said, "Hey man, why don't you come in and get in the gym with me and let's work out?" And I used to work out when he was in high school. And his
You know, you
dad
know,
pulled him
I,
away from me, and he felt like when I would challenge him in workouts, I guess his dad felt like I was being a little too hard on him. And I was telling his dad it was a necessity for him because he didn't understand that, on the upper levels, on the elite levels, they really psychologically, there's some psychological battles that go on in competition. Well, he pulled him away, and we happened to see him years later. Jazz at the University of Portland, and this is, I think, after his sophomore year. And the kid looks real good. I mean, his body looks. I mean, his body is he's just one of those athletes. And he looks at Jazz, and And I think he got that little, oh, yeah, I wonder, I bet you I would, I bet you. So I look at him, I go, hey, man, why don't you come and work out with us? And he kind of glowed. Yeah, okay, I'll come work out. Make a long story short, I think Deshaun was there that day. Deshaun, I think Deshaun walked in the gym and Jazz waxed that ass so bad. He tore that ass up. I haven't seen him since. But that's a situation where the parent thinks the kid is something that he isn't and isn't willing to challenge him. Isn't willing to challenge him psychologically, isn't willing to challenge him physically. Um, when this kid would get aches, it was an injury. You know what I'm saying? So that's another thing altogether, man. When you talking about elite competition and elite sports and playing on an elite level, that's a big component, a huge component on whether your kid can be or whether that sport is made for him or not, or her or not.
Yeah, and I just want to say, like Sean said before, I want the parents and the young sports coaches to know, and the people that are working with the middle school and high school, athletes. If you played at the collegiate level, as soon as you get there, you're going to enter a college strength and conditioning program, and they're hoping that you have already covered certain fundamentals. It doesn't always happen, but the expectation is we want to get you stronger and faster and do it appropriately. Now, they don't always do it right, but they want you to come in and fit into that strength and conditioning program and compete like either that fall, that winter, or that spring, depending on your sport. And with this particular individual, he didn't believe or want to do the research at the time to figure out the demands of a college athlete and what's going to be expected of you. And you're growing into an adult body and you're putting these forces down. Well, we have to do some things that are appropriate, to strengthen the glutes, the hamstrings, and the low back. And because he didn't have that, he tore his back up. And I think he sat out a year and eventually he started playing junior college basketball. I wish the best for him, but I really felt like, I wish we could have helped him.
When I spoke earlier about parents don't know what they don't, they didn't know what they don't know what they don't know. Uh, this is speaking directly to the parents. So a resistance training program is appropriate for your kid as long as that is properly designed and supervised. So we keep that in mind. Properly designed and supervised. So their programs are safe for kids. Resistance training, it does enhance muscular strength and power for the youth. I mean, because if they're young, they're not going to show muscles because they're not at the point, their testosterone isn't developed to the point where it's going to foster muscle growth. But neurologically, their body's going to learn the motor pattern and be able to figure out how to do the lift, and therefore they'll start lifting heavier weights, or they'll look better lifting it. Again, you can improve someone's cardiovascular composition through resistance training. We spoke earlier about improving motor skill that comes through resistance training, and it helps also with sports-related injuries. If the muscle is stronger, it's less likely that it's going to become injured. And if it becomes injured because it's been developed prior to the injury, the downtime is usually less. So that's another thing that to keep in mind. We spoke about the psychology of and well-being of a youth. I mentioned earlier about the parent who noticed the attitude in their kid. She noticed her son walking around with his shirt off. He just had a little bit more confidence. So that's what a resistance training program it does. As a kid continues to reach different milestones, that encourages them. That gives them a sense of accomplishment, that they've accomplished things and that they're moving on. So psychologically, that's very good for them. And another thing, this is really important because not only are you helping a child at the point they're at in childhood, it's also shown that a proper program and developing exercise habits not only assist in childhood, but through adolescence all the way until adulthood. So if they learn how to exercise properly now, and then it's enjoyable, and they make it fun, and uh, it's not drudgery, they're more likely continue that into adulthood. And we know what happens in adulthood when we don't take care of our bodies, when we don't exercise, and the diseases that come upon us because of that. So all of those things are positives when you place your child in the resistive training program, a properly designed and supervised resistive training program. So don't forget that.
Sean, I like what you said about the psychological side, because I remember working with a young volleyball athlete, and I got her in the middle of her 7th grade year, and I was able to work with her through the end of her 8th grade year, and she ended up going into high school and making varsity volleyball. And a large part of that was her gaining the confidence and really starting to appreciate the strength training that we were doing.
Mm-hmm.
And we had actually got her to a point walking into high school to where she could clean 95 pounds. And for some, that might not be a lot, but for a 9th grade girl cleaning 95 pounds,
and using
that boosted her confidence tremendously. And she has. We have videos of it. And I was going to say, if when I was coming up, especially in college, I had the strength and conditioning field was at a different place, because I was reverse curling when it came to cleaning. Eventually I got a little bit better, and even with me not doing it, having sound mechanics, it still helped me as far as like speed and strength. But what I will say for like the sports coach out there, some great resources are the work by Artie Dressler. I would look up Greg Everett, Glenn Pinlay. I found the guy, I forget the guy's name, but he owns Juggernaut Training Systems. And then more importantly, the material by Dr. Quinn Hinnock.
There was a doctor that worked with Jazz earlier on that actually ended up operating on his ankle and putting it back together. I had a number. We often got on the phone and conversated about certain things. When he would have different issues, I'd get him pick up the phone and conversate with her about what we should do next, or if we should do anything. She gave me ideas. I even threw stuff back at her. She was like, "Oh, what do you think about massage therapy? Oh, great. What do you think about pool therapy? Oh, yeah, great." It's very important to have those around that know more than you, to confide in. It's gonna happen. Your kid is gonna get injured, playing the sport. So it would behoove you as you go along to build up relationships with people that are really good at what they do. And if they're willing to open up to you, and willing to build a direct relationship with you, where you can always just pick up the phone, and it's not a situation where, because trust me, I'd have a hell of a bill with Sean if that was the case, because I picked up the phone plenty of times. It was like, "Hey, bro, hey, man, what do I do here, man? I need you." So again, I just thank him for being there and being someone I could confide in and talk to when we were going through that.
Contact me. If I don't know the answer, I know plenty of people who are smaller than I am that can get the information to you. And what I do, I've spoken at clinics and conferences, and just get the information out there. One of the things that we could start doing, which I need to start doing personally, is going to maybe PTA meetings, or if you can find that ally in a youth sports program where you can go in and talk to the parents and the coaches, about this. And one of the things and the benefits of me as being an athletic trainer, they're more readily to listen about the sports injury aspect of it, and then I can start sliding in the strength and conditioning, coming from the strength coach perspective. So I go in as an athletic trainer, but then I can start pointing out certain facts regarding a strength training program and why it's important for their child to participate in one. Another thing, you can point people toward articles, pass out literature, Now with the social media, we have blogs, we have Facebook, we have
Hey,
Instagram.
man, you know,
I have people, based on the stuff that I put out, who've called and asked questions. So those are certain things that we can do. But I guess not everybody's comfortable speaking in front of crowds. I am. But you have to find your niche and the best way that you can present that information, and just make sure the information is valid. It's not hearsay, or it's not by some periodical that's not qualified to speak on the subject. But the bottom line we have to keep in mind, though, whoever you are, parent, coach, whatever, it's all about the kids. I'm not trying to live vicariously through a kid. I had my day in the sun. I played in college. I had fun, was pretty successful. But it's all about the kids. So I want to prepare them to experience some of the fun I had playing athletics. So once we keep it in mind, it's all about the kids, their physical and their mental status, and that they enjoy what they're doing, we're winning.
The Sports Mastery Show is now on Patreon. You can support the show for as little as a cup of coffee per month. To learn more, visit patreon.com/sportsmastery.